Hey everybody, it's Bobby from the Hazmat Guys. Here along with Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hey everybody.
There we go. So, um, I think a lot of people will probably be wondering why we're doing a live video show right in the middle of the day. Very unlike us. But the thing is that we both got together today and we kind of looked at around on both social media, the news, and just general buzz within the community. And it seems that there seems to be a lot of information and disinformation that's going on around the coronavirus, right?
Yeah, I'd have to say I'm really almost a little surprised and shocked. Um, Not because of the general population, right, and their understanding of everything, but more our community, the hazardous materials, the first response community. There is a tremendous amount of this. Um, oh, it's not that big of a deal, like macho bullshit that's kind of floating around it or still floating around. And every time I see it, I have responded something along the lines of, dude, I think you need to take this a little more seriously. Which, if anybody knows me, I don't take anything seriously, right? Like, I literally, right, if you don't have, all right, well, first of all, if you don't have any idea who me and Bob are, right, if somebody has shared this, we are both New York City firefighters. We are both hazardous materials specialists, and we are generally on the first line with a lot of this stuff. We both created training content to help keep firefighters and hazardous materials people and EMS safe during a lot of this stuff. We would consider ourselves to be kind of on the front lines. And today's date is 3/16/2020 at 4:32. The President of the United States just finished a briefing after a huge meeting with the CDC. So a lot of the information that we're going to be giving out and our thought processes are based upon information that we literally know as of this moment.
Right. And to put it into perspective, like one of the things, because, and the reason why we're putting this out, and this is my main reason of getting on here today now, is because the people that are in our community, and I'm talking about the hazardous materials, fire, or police or EMS communities, they're calling the people that watch our show for the information. And what
Right.
we hope, because you're in our social circles, is that you trust us enough to at least give you the down and dirty and the information. And kind of what seems to be happening a lot now is that there's a lot of it's hard to separate the signal from the noise.
Right.
Because and one of the best bits of information I could possibly give to you is right now turn off the TV. Not this show, not this
Not
show,
this show.
not this
No.
show.
Well, what kind of TV? All right. So right, so there's always this state of panic, right? People perceive panic as differently, right? So I go to the supermarket right now, or we will pull back the curtain a little bit. Bob and myself both live on Long Island, highly dense population compared to the rest of the country. So our partner lives out in Arizona. She's seeing things just a little bit differently because her population density is different. She doesn't have necessarily the hot spots that we do here in New York. So if you're looking outside and going, oh, hey, look, everything is fine and peachy and my schools are still open and all this other stuff, there is a very good chance that you are going to be where we are in the very near future. So we are going to approach what we're about to say very much with a prepare for the worst and hope for the best
Yes.
attitude.
Yes, I concur with that. And what is I'm finding is I don't care about your political flavor. No matter what channel, it seems to be a little bit overdone right now. And this is a trend that's going way back before the coronavirus. Is that like even we're from the Northeast, and anytime there was even snow in the forecast, it was snowmageddon, snowpocalypse. It's like
Right.
they over just do. Now, here we are, arguably 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out from when the genesis of this coronavirus really started coming on the radar. And in the beginning, um, there wasn't enough. And now it's getting to almost a crescendo where if you're not prepared for a quarantine, a lockdown, then you're doing yourself a disservice. That is the best way of doing this. And I'm going to try to show, I'm going to bang back and forth between a couple of things on the displays that I have here. But first thing I want to show, and I I don't really care about whether you like what show or whatever. I'm going to flip over to another source here, but this is a article from the Wall Street Journal. Let me just see if I can make this any bigger. I don't think I can, but it is an article from the Wall Street Journal, and it is a great infographic on how this works. And so if you see the top one, that's how it communicates, left to right. You're just infecting the next guy, and then as it comes back, they're recovering, and that ball set goes back and forth. Now, here's how it happens under normal circumstances. Those orange balls are the people getting sick, and you can see the graph on the top of it, how people are getting sick in a rather steep incline, and then the purple starts to decline as it goes through. Now, the only thing it doesn't address is that I said Washington Post or Washington Journal.
I'm not sure. I think it was the Post.
It is the Post. It is the Post.
It is the Post.
But you don't see deaths, and that's one thing that this simulation does not show, is that as people die, those dots actually get fewer. But nonetheless, it's a good simulation. So now let's just bring it over to a quarantine. Look how flat that trend is now, because as those sick people start coming back, that's fine, but we've gotten in front of it to the point where recovery can equal the sicknesses. And this is kind of important because right now, as Mike's going to tell you, is that we're almost at max capacity as far as ICU beds.
Yeah, so there was our Governor Cuomo in New York. He issued a statement early this morning, and he basically said there are a total of 3,000 ICU beds in the state of New York, at which currently, and on average, 80% of them are filled, leaving a 30% vacancy for whatever is coming down the line. And on top of that, the ventilator situation is very similar. There's about 3,000 ventilators throughout the state of New York, and we're going to literally need thousands more. And that's just not going to happen. Even if they had the money to buy them, there's no place to buy them. Everybody else is buying them. If you think your toilet paper has gone out the window, imagine being a ventilator warehouse. There are some strategic reserves scattered throughout the country, but even those will not be enough to hit the demand if people don't start taking this seriously now and doing what they need to do to prevent this virus from spreading.
Well, one of the things you need to do, and this is the next one I kind of want to bring up, is that here is partial quarantine. Now, some people are just stuck in parts, and you can see there's people getting sick, but it's not nearly. See how flat that graph is? And people are recovering over time. You can see the numbers flipping through. This isn't a Paula trick. This is a pretty understood type of way. And now, if we do what really should be done, where a majority of the people are quarantined, look how flat that is. That graph is barely moving, and the majority of the people. So the problem comes with, and I'm hearing this from some of my kids. This is so boring. This is boring staying in here.
This is really boring.
I know, but you know what? You don't need that craft cocktail. You don't need your soy latte. Stay inside, and just write an article. Whittle a canoe.
And so I want to address this flatten the curve, because I think it's something that we had talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's now common verbiage, but what does that mean, like to flatten the curve? I gave New York State as an example for what our governor said this morning. And the concern, right, is that, all right, if we have 3,000 beds, 80% of them are taken up. That leaves us with, 400 or 500 available beds. I'm doing the math off the top of my head. Please don't angrily write back to me telling me my math was wrong. But let's say we had 800 available beds, and we don't flatten the curve, and a lot of people get sick at once. That means there will not be enough beds at the moment that everybody is sick. If we flatten the curve, right, if we flatten that curve out, that means that, okay, I now prolong when I get sick, So hopefully there are enough beds and ventilators and things like that for me when I end up getting sick.
Yes.
Hopefully 3, 4, 5 months down the line.
It's basically staggering out the sicknesses.
Right, because then there's enough people to take care of me, right? Whereas if it all happens at once, there's just not enough people, there's just not enough beds, there's not enough ventilators, and I could potentially just be left to die with no medical care.
Well,
That is the reality of the situation that we're looking at. And if anybody doesn't agree to that, or if anybody is sitting there going, "Oh, that can't possibly happen," look around, like everything is so beautiful and perfect. There are other parts of the world. I read an article yesterday about Italy having a protocol in place. They haven't done it yet, but they have it in place where if you're 80 years or older, you're not getting medical treatment. There is just not enough resources to go around, and they're basically doing a kick triage that we are very familiar with in the fire department for mass casualty incidents. Not only that, but if you have a certain number of comorbidities attached to your health, you also may not be given any kind of services because they don't want to waste the resources on you.
Well, that brings me to, let me just switch over to sources again. This one about the total cases of COVID-19 19 as of Italy versus the United States from March 11th. Now, what is kind of interesting, and I think anybody that's watching this either live or in relatively short time from when we made this thing, is shit's on in Italy, right?
Yes.
I'm not making fun of what they did, but they are 11 days in front of us, right? And this comes back to this. There's a comparison to.
And they're like the size of New Jersey.
Yeah, they're relatively a small country in geographic terms to us, but there's this thing about the lily pads. Whereas if a lily pad doubles every day, it goes 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, and we have a lake, and our job is to stop the lake from being completely overrun by these things, and we get to the point where the whole lake is full. Well, when were we able to stop this thing at maybe, let's say, a halfway point? That was yesterday. So this thing is exponentially growing.
Right. We will always be behind the curve. There is no getting ahead of this curve, right? Our country, the way we are set up, our mindset is to be reactive. So the things that we're doing today should have all been done 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In reality, everything that's happening today should have been done 2 weeks ago. So if you're one of those people that are sitting there saying, well, this is just a larger version of the flu, one, you're wrong, flat out.
Yeah.
Stop listening to that disinformation. This is not the flu. This is different than the flu. You're right. If you want to sit and compare death numbers, tons of people over the course of a year die from the flu, the elderly, this and that. This is hurting more than just the elderly, and it's literally putting people on ventilators.
Now, this is another infographic. 30
and 40 years old.
This is just showing the comparison, and I think this is where people are getting brainwashed. This is very popular on social media about how insignificant they're saying. How insignificant it's such relatively to the flu in comparability to how many people are infected. And if you look at this thing now, I don't know what time frame this was. It does not say when it happened, but you'll see that the coronavirus is way down here at 4.7K, so it's obviously a little old. And then you have AIDS way up here in this big puff ball up here, and then we go up here to the bubonic plague, the smallpox, Spanish flu. So in comparison, it is not a big deal. However, we are at the beginning of the ramp.
Right. AIDS has been around since 1981. Yellow fever since 1800s. So let's see, the swine flu, Ebola, MERS, these are all relatively new diseases that have popped up. The Asian flu was pretty bad, but now I want to truly kind of break some of these apart, all right? The one that could potentially most resemble what we're looking at is the Spanish flu, and that is just, again, the resources were so overwhelmed. MERS, SARS, the Asian flu, all of those flus, Ebola, they had different transmission rates. They were not transmitted from person to person as easily. We are currently looking at a virus that has the potential to stay on some surfaces for days and still be transmitted if you were to touch that surface and then touch a mucous membrane. The transmission rates they're just different. So yes, has AIDS killed a lot of people over the past, 30 years? But look at what has happened in 3 months. We're literally looking at a 3-month time period. Even Ebola has been around. We've known about Ebola since the 80s. And we're talking 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just flipping back and forth between these different things, but please don't this is a social media. This is, I'm not going to say a marketing ploy or a spin of it. It is technically true. However, it is a snapshot as opposed to the video. We're looking at this thing as a video about how it's going to progress. And if you're not doing that, and again, I'm speaking to the people that your people are calling you for the information. And if you're giving don't worry about a kid, then you're doing them a disservice because they're not taking, dude, if John is not taking it serious, I'm not taking it serious.
Right.
Take it serious.
Right.
Wash
yeah, people, even the general population, they look at us to be like, okay, what is the first responder world doing? They're not really taking it serious. Why should I? And maybe we're wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe I've been yelling and screaming about this for the past 3 months, and I am totally wrong. And okay, you can write me an email in 4 months and be like, Mike, you're an idiot. Okay, great. I'm okay with that. But what if I'm right? Like, what if the worst case scenario, not even the worst case scenario, the mid-range scenario starts to pan out? And I'm not even talking about the virus. I'm talking about the social discourse. I'm talking about the supply chain, which is extraordinarily fragile in our country. And we haven't even begun to see the lack of supplies coming over from China because we're still a few months behind that supply curve. So we literally need to be doing everything in our power right now to be, as a country, stopping and slowing down the reproductive ratio as quickly as possible.
All right, so to wrap this thing up, I'm always a big fan of giving some takeaways for you, our good listeners out there, to kind of bring back to the police precinct, the EMS station, whatever it might be, is we're an emergency service, right? And we are going to have interactions with the public, and therefore we are in greater danger to bring back something, not just for ourselves, but let's say you stepped in something. Let's say you touched something, and you're coming back to the firehouse. Now, touch something is easy. Take off your gloves. The problem is that a lot of us are wearing either leather or rubber boots. And when you get back to the fire station, police precinct, or EMS station, you have this stuff on you. And so I'm going to say last night, actually, is the total truth. I was asked to, along with Mike, come up with a plan for our department on how we are going to at least try to stem this thing. And so there's a million things. We want it to be good for our equipment and also good for the people. And so I'm just going to show you this. This is the Scott SCBA, which is what our department uses. You probably can't read this, but if you do a search for SCBA Regulator sanitization, you'll find something like this. And just a couple of things here that's kind of an interesting thing. Let me see if I can zoom.
While you're looking and zooming, you know how I'm always saying in lectures and classes, don't make assumptions. Always do the research.
Yes.
So, right, we harm ourselves when we make assumptions. So when Bob was first tasked with this, he called me up and we were talking about it. And he was like, how do you think we should clean the regulators? And right off the top of my head, I went, all right, well, that's easy. The solution right now is a 1% sodium hypochlorite solution in water, put it in a spray bottle, spritz the inside of your regulator, and you're good to go. And he went, nope, you're wrong. So do not just assume. Please, in this atmosphere, whatever you're going to do, take the time to research the proper way of doing it. Because if he had called me up a day before he did the research, and just went off of what I said, he would be giving out the wrong advice.
Right. And so, what I am not advocating for this. All I'm saying is I will give you what we found, and then you can do your own myth busting on this. So if you look at that screen, and I had highlighted two parts there, they are recommending an iodine-based disinfectant sanitizer called Whiskadine Plus. Okay, so now Whiskadine Plus is just a brand. But the key to it is an iodine-based disinfectant sanitizer. And I was like, you know what? I do a lot of brewing and distilling. I mean, allegedly, you know. So, uh, right? And one of the things we use is an iodine-based disinfectant sanitizer. So I ran over to my little shed over there, and I was looking at it, and what I found was IOStar. It's called IOStar, and what Whiskadine is basically a phosphoric acid and an iodine-based solution. Okay, now somebody might say, well, they said Whiskadine, you're using this IOStar, that is not compatible. I think we're probably pretty much in the right spot here. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the right stuff that will be good for our equipment, not degrade it to a point where it's not usable, and still accomplish what we're trying to do. This document is out there, but the problem is that Whiskadine is not available anymore. It's been discontinued. So I had to find a new place to get this stuff. So it says don't, and the other part I highlighted is never use quaternary ammonium type, which is basically ammonia, right? Ammonia
right.
diluted.
No Windex.
Right. So now
don't shoot Windex in your regulator.
So I've seen documents that advocate for a sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach, in a 10-to-1 ratio for effective disinfecting of software, face pieces. And the problem is that inside the regulator is a hazard as well. So what we have recommended to our bosses that are omnipotent is to use this IOStar, which actually can be found in any brew store or distilling store, or even any distillery or brewery that you have in your area. I'm gonna bet you they have this stuff in there. But the second part of this whole thing is that you're bringing this stuff back to the firehouse. You could take this stuff and either in a spritz bottle or a little boot wash, which is just a pop-up pool, or even a half a drum. Cut a drum down in half. Have the guy step around in it, splash, splash, splash like a kid, and then get out. You will kind of stop it, but it takes anywhere from 4 to 10 minutes of contact time for you to get that done. Now, it doesn't mean I have to be in my boots, in my pants for 10 minutes. That means it'll do its job while you're upstairs or in the back. So it just has to stay on the boot, on the piece for 10 minutes for good measure to kill this thing. Again, don't believe what we're saying. Myth bust what we're saying.
Yeah, and that is actually a key to a lot of stuff that I just want our first responders to really be aware of when they're disinfecting the phone in the firehouse, the doorknob in the firehouse, the handle on the rig, is that a lot of the directions, if you really read them, like let's take Lysol, for example, it's a spray and let dry, not a spray and a wipe. That stuff needs to be in contact with the surface for a number of minutes before it is considered effective. And one of the other things that I definitely want to talk about is interacting out in public. And although this is not necessarily from like a CDC, I haven't found anything out there on it, but I'm very comfortable with it because it's how we operate as hazmat technicians. Dirty, clean, dirty, clean. Try to keep somebody clean if possible to help the dirty guys. And I've even ended up instituting that in my own interactions out in public. I will maintain a dirty hand and a clean hand. And I know this sounds kind of crazy, but just think about it for a moment. I was watching people walk into 7-Eleven the other day. They were using a napkin to open the door handle. Great. They walked over to the thing. They grabbed their coffee. Great. They touched the handle on the coffee dispenser, poured it out with the same hand, grabbed a straw, stuck it in the cup, and started drinking from it. We seriously need to be considering every step we make. One of the things that I've been doing is I will do all of my public interactions with one hand and all my personal stuff with another. So I take out my debit card and my phone with my right hand. I put my debit card in the machine. I touch the pin pad with my left hand. My left hand is the dirty hand. So all of the stuff that I'm constantly using in public, if nobody else is touching it, I have a clean hand and I have a dirty hand. I don't know if that is going to be a very effective measure, but it's an extra step that I'm taking as I'm out in public just to reduce that possibility of getting myself contaminated and sick, because ultimately, as first responders, whether you're EMS, fire, nurses, doctors, we need to be there and we need to be going above and beyond to keep ourselves from getting sick so we can do the job of serving the public.
Which leaves us with our last point that we're going to leave the show with, is that these are the signs and symptoms of coronaviruses versus the flu versus the allergies, and you're going to notice a little bit of overlap with these things. This is as much for us to watch the other responders, because the more effectively and quickly we can identify these symptomology, and again, we're not saying you're doctors, we're not saying, but if something looks like a dog and barks like a dog and smells like a dog, it might be the dog, right? So with that, high fever, from what I understand from just people that have had the coronavirus, they say it's really not that bad of a virus, at least the people I've read testimonials from, but they said the fever was unbelievable. They said it ramped up and it was done in like 8 hours. But that fever, they said, was like their heads was melting off their bodies. There's a dry cough, shortness of breath, and fatigue. I'm always fatigued, so I might have the corona. I don't know. But just find the symptomology, post it all around the firehouse, because not everybody has it memorized around. And if you start going, hold on a second, Joe's constantly coughing. He's on the couch all the time. He's saying he can't get up the stairs. Maybe maybe it's a dog. So maybe we might not. I'm not guaranteeing anything. We might do one of these shows every day or 2 days with new information that's coming out, new things that are coming across our bow. And if you have anything that is can be contributed to the community, if you have any good information, infographics, or something that is fact based, not social media based, by all means, send it to us at info@thehazmatguys.com, and we'll see where this goes. Right, Mike?
Yeah. One last thing that just kind of popped in my head.
Please.
Go ahead. Be that weird person that wears the gloves around the fire station. Act as if everybody around you has it. And I'm saying act as if everybody around you has it because you can transmit and spread before you have symptoms. That is one of the interesting things about this virus, is that you don't have to wait until you're spiking a fever or have a dry cough to be contagious. So if even in the firehouse, we are essential personnel, we will be going to work, whether you're a paramedic, firefighter, nurse, doctor. If you act as if everybody has it and it's coming to get you, you will help flatten that curve.